know that Naphtali is going to be arriving he said about 5:10, but we're going into closed session anyway. All right, welcome to the agenda of the city council closed session and the regular meeting of the city of Coachella. The city council sitting as Coachella Sanitary District, Coachella Fire Protection District, Coachella Financing Authority, Coachella Education and Government Access Cable Channel Corporation, Coachella Water Authority, and successor agency of the Coachella redevelopment. I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting at 5:08. And then pursuant to government code and Assembly Bill 361, along with the governor's state of emergency declaration issued on March 4th, 2020, this meeting will be conducted via teleconference or in person. With that, we'll go ahead and move to the next item. It's a roll call. Angela, the council member Beeman Jacinto will not be present, and council member Galarza will be late. We do have a quorum with the remainder of the group. Move on to the virtual public meeting. Can I have a motion to approve resolution 22-67? A resolution to continue fully or partially virtual public meetings. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We'll move on to approval of the agenda. Is there any approval? Are there any changes to the agenda, Mr. City Manager?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, staff would like to recommend to pull item number 9 for a quick presentation and update prior to the approval of the consent calendar.
This is approving the final parcel map, resolution 22-72.
Correct.
Okay. Any other changes?
No, sir.
Okay, you would like to pull that item?
We would like to have a presentation before you guys approve
Okay,
it.
that's fine. So there are no changes to the agenda. Can we get a motion to approve the agenda as written?
Motion to approve the agenda as written.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. We'll move on now to public comments. Is there any public comments on the closed session? Seeing none, we'll move now and adjourn to closed session. There it is. All right, we return back from closed session. Mr. City Attorney.
Yes, council, city council in closed session on you seek direction on reportable acts for taking on the side.
Okay, we'll move now to the Pledge of Allegiance. And Captain, I'm gonna ask if you could lead us in the pledge.
Chief.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have no proclamations and presentations. Move on to written communications. Angela, are there any written communications?
There are none.
Okay, we'll move on now to the consent calendar. It's recommended that the consent items be acted upon simultaneously. We do have a presentation on item number 9. This is resolution 2022-72. Gabriel, gonna make a presentation on the approving the final parcel map.
Andrew Simmons will be providing that presentation.
He's not there.
Andrew, welcome. Item number 9.
Andrew, are you there?
Why don't I take a motion to approve the consent calendar with the exception of item number 9, and we can come back to it. Is there a motion to approve consent calendar with the exception of item number 9? There's a
We're
motion.
gonna come back to it today in the later.
We'll come back to it today in this meeting,
Okay,
yes.
perfect. Second.
There's a motion and a second motion by Councilmember Gonzalez, second by Councilmember Galarza. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We'll move on to item number 15. This is adopt annual budget of the organizational structure. Gabriel, staff, I took just an overview of the presentation, and it basically presents what we had last week or last time around. So I'd like to understand what's going on here.
All right, so at the last council meeting on the budget presentation, there were requests made that we bring back certain details in certain sections of the budget. So that's what we have in the presentation. So let me walk through some of it here. So just as a background to kind of catch up on where we kind of ended the last meeting, we did have the partner requests that proposed a $32.6 million expenditure budget with a $978,000 deficit. And then the city manager did recommend a budget of $31.8 million with a balanced budget at that level. We also had, and I'm focusing on the general fund here because that's where the questions had revolved around. We did have a discretionary fund balance in the general fund reserves of $17.8 million with fiscal reserves fully funded. And then council had requested additional analysis on particularly sheriff's contract costs and the recommended personnel additions. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and take the sheriff's contract costs first. It's a little bit shorter item. Looking at this, starting with a little bit more of a historical perspective here, because I know council wanted to kind of see how service levels and costs had kind of progressed over time. The initial contract with the city and between the city and the sheriffs started, was back in 1998. So it's going on 25 years term here with 5 renewals of 5 years subsequent term contracts. And then in between, there were numerous changes and amendments. So just to kind of highlight the current service levels, right now they're 17.5 equivalent patrol deputies. Then we have one dedicated sergeant, 3 deputy sheriffs on the community action team, which are more dedicated to the city. Then there's 1 deputy on the narcotics task force, 1 on the gang task force, 1 on the PAC task force, and then 3 community service officer positions that are currently, this is under the current contract as it stands right now. So looking at it's a little bit difficult to put all the different pieces in place. So what I ended up doing so that you can kind of see how this has progressed over time is looking at the end of the contract periods, the end of the 5 years. But I think it gives a pretty solid representation of what has been happening as far as service levels go. So if you'll see that, and there are some slight timing differences, but you'll see here that in 2007, the highest levels of service were prior to the recession. And then coming out of the recession, it was reduced to, it's been pretty steady for since. So I do want to point out, just so that there's no confusion on this 18.5 versus the 17.5, the sheriff's department did go to different shifts. So it is the same 90 hours per day, just the change in shifts equates to a different equivalency. The actual service level for 2022 was 18.8 rather than 17.5, but these are the listed contract amounts. And I know council was looking at the contracts. Don't want to necessarily go through every piece here, but if you look down at the bottom, toward the bottom here, you'll see that these are the costs as they, and I rounded just to make it feel a little bit easier, as they are at the end of the 5-year periods. You'll see that the actual change it's jumped quite a bit between the 5-year periods. But one way to look at this too would be to look at it in relation to something. And obviously the easiest one would be the general fund. So if you look at the bottom line, you'll see that after, and there's a little bit of timing differences, but after coming out of the recession, it's been pretty consistent as a percentage of the general fund in the between 31 and 37%. That's pretty consistent given all the variables that are floating through that. But just to kind of common size it, because it's kind of hard to say, well, it went up 36.7%. Well, in relation to what was going on in the world in those 5 years, it's a little bit hard without some point of reference. So that kind of gives it a little bit of a perspective on that. I did go through, so that's kind of a trend over time. I did then kind of fast forward on the details, which is what council was looking at a little bit more to the more current 5 years. I don't necessarily want to go through all this unless council had specific questions, but these are what the actual costs have been. And you will see, well, looking at down at the bottom line at the increase, you'll see the increases over the previous 5-year contract period. And then we have the projected for this year included. So if you look at the 5 preceding years, you'll see it comes to 20%, which is really a 4% average increase in contract costs year over year in the past 5-year contract period, which is this year's a little bit more, but still relatively in line. So that's kind of the detail breakdown of it based on the contract, based on what we spent.
Nathan, the one that stands out to me is the CSOs.
Yes.
So we went from a few years ago, and I'll go back, the next slide. So like it's a big change from 2019, we spent $3,600 on CSOs. Today, we're spending $429,000 CSOs. Can we just clarification on that? So
okay, so some of these positions are grant funded.
Okay,
So that makes it a little bit difficult to have a representation here in that if we have a grant funder, for example, the tobacco CSO that we have, that will show their full salary, fully burdened salary cost here as an expense, but we're getting reimbursed for it. But we can't go cram the reimbursement into this equation. So it picks up when we do that as a grant funded position like that, the whole amount.
of these 429,000, how much do we have an idea how much is grant funded?
About 100 and I want to say 160,000, something in that neighborhood for one of the positions is currently grant funded for the tobacco.
Yeah.
grant.
And it's very minimal, but I think the one thing that we should really kind of pay attention to is that what each percent increase costs as it relates to the overall cost. So a 5% increase is $500,000. And that's ultimately to, general fund revenue that's coming in. And then it gets compounded as it goes. So just FYI, so another 3%, 4% next year, that means that you're gonna have to find, $300,000 to $500,000 in order just to have a flat budget. And then that's assuming that our revenue at the city is growing at that extent, which it has not. And that would be interesting to show this as it relates to how growth. Now, lately, we've enjoyed revenue growth, but it hasn't necessarily been that way.
Yeah.
That's the point to know.
So, any other specifics on that? There were a couple things, but mostly it kind of just, it just trends up over time. There wasn't anything that jumped out. The miscellaneous categories, again, adjusting for grant funded positions over the years. I didn't want to have a whole list of different little grants. looking through here.
And it'd be good at, looking at the historical coverage rate, that's just the cost of keeping what we have.
Yes.
That's how it's another way to look at it. Like if we look at what we've had from 2012 to today, just to keep what we have has gone up just significantly at that current, rate. So if we add more, then now all of a sudden you're gonna, your balanced budget goes backwards and you go into a negative budget and basically deficit budgeting.
I think that we're going through that problem as well with adding additional employees for the city. It's the same thing. We're adding fixed costs, but obviously if we don't have any additional revenue streams, it's always the same concern.
Yeah, so I do want to kind of go through that a little bit. I know that's the concern.
What goes into miscellaneous?
So miscellaneous, what I basically did is took any category over time that was a little bit different. So like the PACT grant, for example, the city's no longer receiving that in the current budget year 22-23. So if we received $150,000 in the PACT grant back in 2019-20, I didn't want to have a PACT grant that goes and then goes to zero. So I just took anything that wasn't pertinent to the current contract and just put it in the miscellaneous to kind of get it out of the picture a little bit because it wasn't helpful. There's some other like office supplies and stuff that's a few $1,000s. The biggest one because of the grants. So then kind of the last little piece that had come up at the last council meeting was in regard to the public safety, the city police department feasibility study and where we were with that. So the city manager who's handling this directly has this kind of put out the timeline of what he's expecting to see. So expecting to release the RFP in the next couple weeks, give or take when we can get it out. Want to get the RFP out for 30-day period. That makes sense given the type of contract, the type of request that we're making and the firms that'll be doing it. Depending on the situation, sometimes 30 days is a little bit short, but we'll try that as an initial plan. And to evaluate them by September 5th, which would be in time so that it can make the agenda packet for the award on the September 14th meeting. And then at that time, we'll know what they've presented, where they're going with it, and then council can provide feedback and direction at that point. Once we have it, scoped, if we need to amend scope of service after that, obviously that's something that we can work through with the respondents. But right now we kind of got to get a baseline in. So, and then from there, the study process is obviously going to be extensive and it's going to take some time because I believe council wants it done correctly and thoroughly. So that's just kind of the plan on that item, because I know it was one that was certainly brought up at last meeting.
Thank you.
So if there are any other questions on the police costs, Lieutenant Vasquez is here also. I'm hitting the contracts, but I don't know the specifics of in the field. So if there's anything else on that.
I think it'd be a good idea too, to provide the analysis that it was called matrix analysis that was done maybe like 4 years ago by a lot of the contract cities of Riverside County. And then just provide that as a memo to the city council so that they could look at that as a basis point to evaluate a new study.
We'll send that over.
All right. So then with that, I'm going to move into the positions. I did kind of was asked for details, so I do have a lot of details in here. So I'm going to kind of try to walk through it, but obviously any questions, let me know. We did get requests for additional details, not only just in the positions themselves and what the tasks were, but kind of our overall, how we had approached it in relation to the overall structure of the city. So just wanted to kind of give a historical background real quick here so that we understand where we're starting here. Positions from 2018 through 2021 remain relatively flat. And it's a little bit difficult because general funds at certain positions are allocated, but just for comparative units, we're talking about a roughly 46 equivalent units or positions. They're not actual people, but if you add up all the fractions, we get to about 46. That stayed roughly consistent from 2018 through 2021. In 2022, we added an additional 3 employees, being the PIO, the senior planner for development services, and the Cannabis Compliance Liaison, which was a part-time position. And then in fiscal 2022, we added the IT tech position and the department assistant 2 to development services. So over the past 5 years, we've added roughly 4.5, we'll just call it 5 for sake of rounding, but we do need to come back to the part-time position a little bit later, but 5 positions. I know that there've been other position reconfigurations or rearrangements. I know it seems like there's a bunch of new faces at City Hall every time you walk in, but those haven't, for purposes of this analysis, they didn't change the workloads. I mean, we had a finance director doing what a senior management analyst was previously doing, but the stuff that they were doing is still the same things. We're just trying to streamline with those. So when we're looking at it, we are looking at basically adding 1 position per year over the past 5 years on average, or 5 positions, just to kind of get a context on that. Then as far as the overall organizational structure, our considerations in presenting the recommendation, I know that we talked about having at the strategic planning session, we talked about having an overall study, and that is the bigger piece that we're looking at here. So, but in anticipation of that, we need to actually kind of sort of make sure that our actual workloads are covered. So there are certain immediate needs and certain things that we need to cover outside of that study. You don't want to get into the study until you've actually identified all the workloads and have the full. In other words, if you had a task, right, of scanning invoices, and that's a department assistant 1 task, we need to make sure that we cover the task in the positions. When we do the reorg, where we put the department assistant 1, that would be the consideration in the reorg. So part of our consideration here was making sure that we've got the full coverage of the tasks that we need to cover. We also did look at the department's request for 11 positions, which is all that we discussed before. When we did the analysis, there were 13 positions actually identified that we needed, 2 of them being in grants, and that's mostly has to do with the significant increase in grants at the city. We didn't end up recommending them, but I just, for purposes of analysis, that did come into our consideration. I'll show you a brief summary of it shortly. So another step that we did take, so it is moving forward. I want council to understand that we're kind of moving towards an end goal here. We did get the utilities manpower study RFP out. We do want to see where we are with that before we start looking at overall organizational structures as well, that if we have a deficiency there, we're going to want to know to address it when we do the overall structural analysis. So we're moving in that direction. The recommended 6 positions included in the budget, we pulled them out because we did consider them critical to maintaining existing service levels. I mean, that's why we ended up recommending them. They do cover existing workloads. We didn't pull anything out and say, well, we'd like to do that, or that should be done. We're literally looking at what was existing. And then we did look at it from a fiscal impacts perspective in the last 2 bullets points. 5 of them are not fully funded through general funds, so it does give us something of a buffer against economic changes. And the general fund obviously takes the biggest hit in economic downturn. So that they're not fully funded was something we considered when we pulled them as something that we thought we could bring forward. And including those positions didn't exceed our normal revenue growth. So those were the considerations that we did in the overall in getting to those positions. So this is kind of a summary just of the analysis that we did. Just want to point out a couple things and then we'll move on to the positions themselves. But if you look at the red highlighted, number 2 under city managers, those were the 2 additional senior management analysts that we were talking about in the grants department that were added to or that were part of the analysis that I didn't previously include. I just want to touch on a couple of the savings items here. You'll notice at the beginning, their building maintenance workers were requested. Those, for example, we decided needed further analysis in that there are overtime considerations. There's how we're going to, contract versus in-house, those types of considerations that would be part of the broader scope of analysis. On the senior management analyst for public works, though, there is savings there, quote, depending how you want to look at it, but it's being funded at LMD's 50% of it. We feel comfortable with that being a split that mirrors the actual tasks. We did talk about it, but the finance department assistant, this one is currently filled with a temp worker. So the $78,000 in savings is really just taking the cost that we're currently paying for that worker out of the equation in relation to a city position. Then planning manager, we said we need further analysis on that, mostly because we had the senior planner that council had approved and that hasn't been filled. It's still not filled. So we wanted to at least have that filled first and then see what the needs were from there before we try to move forward with a position along those lines. But in that same department, senior management analyst there, the savings there are from the cannabis liaison position that was part-time. So that the recommendation is simply to turn that into a full-time position going forward and then be able to take on additional tasks. And obviously there's some growth and we'll go into a little bit details on the cannabis compliance side. But that's the savings. The savings for the building official is we currently have a building official through Wildan as a consultant, and that's not paying those costs if the city hired a full-time position. And then kind of skipping down here to the last position here. The only one that we included was under human resources, and I'll go into a little bit why that's fully funded out of the general fund. It's just that we have an extreme need there. So that is a fully funded general fund position. And then department assistant 2 on the city manager side of things. That one has savings in that it's being used for multiple departments. So that's kind of the big picture. So 13 positions, 7 we said we need further analysis and we need to hold on those. And then we recommended the 6, and I want to go into a little bit because council wanted a little bit of details as to why we would do that. So kind of so this is just kind of a summary. There was a couple other elements that I did want to put in that I thought council would be interested in, although I didn't for the broader discussion, they weren't quite as prevalent. But if you look at, so we'd said that it's $432,000 to the general fund is what we'd said was the cost of these positions given what we're offsetting with them. But there are a couple other savings points on here that also I figured council after last discussion would be interested in knowing. At least the management analyst, I have them budgeted as senior management analyst because that's what's approved. We do not have a management analyst position as part of that sequence of job descriptions approved. These can be filled with management analysts. So the differential between the two is about $17,000. So those would not go out as senior management analysts, although I can't put in the budget a position, doesn't exist. But we would be bringing that back to council to add that to the series. So it would go management analyst, senior management analyst, which would create savings once we did fill the positions of roughly $34,000. And then the other consideration too, although small, is the department assistant for the grants. We have started costing to programs. It's very difficult to cost to programs. It's one of the #1 audit issues that you have. We started doing it to a certain extent. I do feel comfortable we'll be able to code or cost a significant portion of the salary to that. It's just one of those things that it's hard to, I mean, we need to budget the full position like as if we have the funds for it, or else we can't hire for it. So there will be additional savings in that position, and that would be its primary responsibility. So just wanted to have that additional analysis as part of the detail. So that 386,000 would be the actual cost of the general fund. That's all that was worked out, provided council approved the lower salary positions for the management analyst classification. Okay, so kind of walking through these relatively quickly so council understands what the needs were. This position is expected to be split between LLMDs and public works. The primary focus of this management analyst would be contract management. Right now we have two issues. One, if you notice on the second bullet point, the LLMD budget went from 2.2 million to 4.5 million dollars. I know council was definitely wanting to get some projects done in these LMDs and wanting to move some of the things forward. So they were included in your CIP budget that was presented previously and are included in the recommended budget in total, but there is a significant increase in contract work that needs to be done there. Additionally, there's quite a bit of contracts that the public works director is directly handling right now, and it would allow for more projects to be brought to council and move forward from public works if she was able to push some of the actual management of existing contracts to management analysts. So this is the reasoning behind the need for this particular position. Finance department. Essentially, this position, this is one of the positions at the Civic Center. So there are 4 customer service representatives at the city that take payments, do cashiering. They handle utility payments, any sort of payments that are made at the city. So they're face of the public, face of the city to the public. This would be for one of the positions at the Civic Center that is filled currently by a temporary worker. It's simply a matter of being under the MOU. This has been filled full time for more than 2 years. This is the only reason I'm bringing up that it's 4 positions is that this is not a position that we would be able to not have at some point in the future. If we were to say there was a recession or something like that, we wouldn't be able to get rid of one, because then you would literally have the Civic Center with only one person covering the front counter. And what would you do at lunches and that sort of thing? So the minimum service level that we need to provide is 4 here. So if it's filled with a temp or it's filled with a city personnel, we are going to need to cover the 4 positions one way or the other. So that's the reasoning behind this particular position. It's a minimal cost, but it is functioning the way it is. It's just a matter of the way that it's set up with the MOUs. Okay, so the management analyst in development services, again, like I was discussing, this is the cannabis liaison position, and the cannabis liaison did leave the city. I know council's aware of that, but just so everyone who's listening understands, did leave for another opportunity. So this position is currently vacant. So at the point that it's vacant, this would be the time to revamp that position if we're going to do that. The cannabis program is grown significantly. I just looked at it in how many dollars in cannabis revenue have come into the city increase in the past year, and we're talking $33 million in revenues. So the industry is growing. I know council's been certainly been very involved in this, but there's quite a bit of increase in related workloads as it pertains to this. The city is also looking to go through another round of social equity based dispensary licensing. So these are programs that would need to be worked on under this position. If additionally with the full-time position, there's quite a bit of like research and extra analysis that needs to be done. And some of these things are, beneficial to the community, looking into projects where they've been, that sort of thing, that would be assigned in addition to the cannabis activities that would be beneficial. It would certainly, I think that this position, having a solid person in this position would be helpful in that it would increase revenues overall, and that the revenue collections would be more precise. I mean, that was a huge help in having this position to start with, and that we were able to look at it from a taxing perspective, knowing that we had solid information. And it certainly would improve public safety and it is a little bit difficult to regulate the businesses when you show up every other day or return phone calls. So on a sporadic basis. So just the recommendation and the need for the position was certainly there, so the recommendation was to put it as a full-time rather than put it back as a part-time position. And that would be the proper classification in our full-time position descriptions. The building official, currently, I think the biggest issue right now is that the building official currently works 2 days a week. So it's a contracted part-time kind of position, causing similar discrepancies with projects in that there's somebody there every other day. They certainly are seeing delays in projects as a result of this. I know that this is right now there's a lot of activity in this function that may not always be there, but at the same time, we are dealing with that particular issue right now. So it would certainly allow for more prompt inspections, more prompt responses, and certainly would be, I think, more in line with the expectations of the residents and what we would be able to provide out of having a full-time person in that position. Okay, so now the next couple are really the most critical parts of the discussion here. So HR has been inundated with COVID regulatory requirements, and then we've had significant increases in recruitments. And obviously the labor markets are a thing right now. They're very tight, and this is causing some disruption kind of across the organization as a whole, and most organizations, and just kind of across the board. So HR has been juggling as best they can. They've been doing actually a very solid job at juggling, but it's at a certain point, it's just not sustainable to keep juggling between recruitments, new regulations, trying to get training in place. It's just not, at a certain point, it's not feasible. I did put the statistics for the recruitment. So in 2023 or in 2021, we had 23 recruitments. So it's just shy of double in 2022 right now. And unfortunately, we don't see this necessarily slowing down anytime soon. So looking at one of the HR industry surveys that came out, and this response time on recruitments was in the top 3 issues that applicants are having with selecting employment opportunities right now. So, and salary was not in the top 3. So it is crucial to all the departments that were able to get these recruitments turned around as quickly as possible. Also, I did want to point out that the HR staff has remained at 2 for the past 14 years, and 14 years is kind of when the structure that's in place went into effect. The budget, and I'm talking budget positions are not always filled, but just budget positions that were approved went from 70 to 83 over that time, and there hasn't been no staff increase to accommodate those positions. And that, coupled with the labor issues going on right now, is putting them at we have a need there to fill to take over some recruitments. The one thing that's really suffering is employee training. That's kind of been the thing that's gone by the wayside, and that I've seen that come across before. And when you get into a liability issue or legal issue or something like that, that's not a good position for the city to be in. So we certainly want to address that in some way. If we were able to put this position in, they'd be able to do some of the recruitment. A lot of it's routine. Post a thing, look through the postings, that sort of thing, and then that would let the HR manager get into some of the training, some of the regulations that need to be addressed. So that this was certainly a need that we, this was kind of a high priority need here. And then the next one's probably also on the same level here. Okay, so grants program. I said we'd circle back to this a little bit. There's some information in here that just good to be aware of and consider it regardless. Right now, the grants division has 1 staff, and that's the city's grants manager. She has been dealing with a significant increase, and we all see it. We have quite a bit of new grant funding. And keep in mind that we're not talking just grant funding. I mean, we're talking program funding. So like ARPA funds, ARPA reporting, all of this still plays into that specific division. So in 2021, we ran $6.9 million in grant expenditures. I know we have more grants on the books, but that's how much we spent out of those grants. In the prior 3 years, we averaged $3.9 million. So the actual expenditures are increasing, and that's without spending any of the ARPA funds, or maybe $30,000 of them. Right now, we have grant applications in that exceed $50 million. Last year, we were talking about, $20 million type of range of grant applications in that, that we're hoping to get approved and funded. Another aspect of this that is, and I know we've talked about this a little bit in the past, another aspect of this is the neighborhood assistance funds. And for this city, these are the programs that were like the affordable housing in the past. So we have those programs on the books, and those are still going. People pay off the loans. But those are administered through this division. We do have $1.7 million right now sitting in cash that could be deployed into programs in the city, but we do have a staffing issue in deploying those funds. That would be deployed through this division. So this was why when we looked at it, we said, no, for this level of activity, we actually need more person. We need an additional couple of personnel. And that was just in looking at it benchmarked against other grant organizations, more formalized structure, because the city's obviously building this particular aspect of city's funding. But for this level of funding, you would certainly have more personnel involved in the process, just as a general able to properly complete all the aspects of it. So that was why we definitely took the department request for at least the one position and made the recommendation on that position, leaving the other positions to be considered as part of the reorg study later, and looking, waiting until we had funding in place for those, because obviously funding is an issue for all of this. So after walking through that, the whole thing, that was what our analysis was. That's why we ended up with the recommendation that we did. I know that I went directly to the recommendation and summary at the last meeting as part of the whole budget presentation. So the city manager recommendation is to include the 6 positions as in the draft budget, and that's just a recommendation based on those that analysis. Alternatively, council can amend the recommendation and pass the budget without positions. It would provide a 1.2% savings to the general fund. And that is an alternative, obviously, that council can consider. If council does go that direction, we just want to make sure that we include in that action that we put the part-time cannabis liaison back in, because it's not included in the budget currently because we were recommending other positions. So just a technicality, but so it's there. And then in case council was somewhere in between on this, what we did is just presented the same schedule, but in priority level. And I think that the top 3, the human resources, the grants, and the public works, those are the most critical. They're all critical. They all have functions. We do have the need in all the areas, but we did want to break it down in a priority level just so council can have that perspective as well for decision-making purposes. That was the details that I had put together in response.
Okay, thank you. Council, any questions? Council.
No, I was gonna ask for the priority list, and you have it in order. What was the matrix, or how did you decide the priority?
So the priority list is just based on need. So the grants, that had the most immediate need. We need to get those with the $5.8 million in funding that we don't have from last year is something that we definitely need to get involved in getting. It's not uncommon for grant funds not to be collected quickly, and the city's not having an issue cash wise currently, but at the same point, those are starting to be big numbers that need to be followed up on. We need to collect those funds. So that was that one. And then the HR one was, it definitely affects every department if HR is not able to quickly process. And you've seen the problems that we're having, like the finance manager position. We just continuously trying to bring applicants, and it's not working. So that is critical for all the departments. It's not just an issue that it doesn't affect everyone.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I see those 2 priorities. One thing that I realized too in our onboarding process, maybe with talking with IT or something, but it's all paperwork. It's all paper, and even like forms I need to submit, like for anything, it's all paper. And most organizations today, HR is sort of a lot of it is online, which makes it more efficient for our employees, and you don't need to spend time on scanning documents and all that stuff. But I think there, in addition to the departments, there needs to be sort of like, how can we use our IT technicians to work with them on, making it sort of processing all of our stuff that way. Like, all employees within the city of Coachella, to when they're onboarded, that sort of a little more efficient, more modern.
Paperless.
Yeah, only when you need to, but yeah, it's like it's like obviously we have an older city hall, but we can look to have a little more modernized onboarding process, which makes everything easier for everyone. And any form that we have, it's scanned, thinking about, save money on paper too. But it's just the thought too that I had in my onboarding experience with the city and the trainings and stuff. But I don't, obviously I voiced my support for the 6 positions in the last meeting. If we're somewhere in the middle, I'm also comfortable prioritizing the top 3 that the city leadership here is recommending. So those are my comments. But we're comfortable moving on board with all 6, and I'm cool with it. If we need to meet in the middle, I'm happy to prioritize the top 3 too.
Any other
Nathan,
comments?
if, so when we do the reorg, some of these positions, right, department assistant 1, department assistant 1, we have 2 of those. So what if it comes back that we, for example, need a higher level of assistant? Then what happens with that department assistant 1 or the one that's titled 2?
So you're saying if we have a mismatch in the skill
Correct.
levels that are needed
Correct.
when we come back with them, then at that point we would have to reorg the positions, which is what we've done with several of them. The customer service supervisor, we'd have to come back at that point with those. These, if you notice, these are in tune with, these are not highly skilled, high education requirement technical positions. That's why we felt a little more comfortable with these than if we were, recommending like the planning manager. That those types of positions harder to fill right now, cost more. Definitely need to look at it more higher level approach.
I would imagine that those lower positions are going to be trained and promoted with time. At least that would be, it's the norm, right? Once they learn they can.
Yeah, so for example, the department assistant, you see 1, 2 there. Though that's a series, you're supposed to start in at 1 and then move up to 2. It's designed that way. The management analyst, when we bring that back to council, regardless of this, we need to redesign that position for that series of positions. That would be the design pattern of that. You would start out as a management analyst, and then you'd have move up opportunities in that position. So yes, those are consistent.
Well, I think that we value all of our employees regardless of whether they're assistants. There's many of them that are highly educated, but I do agree with the temps. That was something that made me very uncomfortable when we had temps filling in positions for 1 or 2 years. At that point, then it needs to be evaluated for us to bring them on or bring someone on permanently. As far as the cannabis liaison, I know from my experience on the PC is that the development department was really overloaded with just the amount of cannabis businesses that was coming through, and then to regulate it and stay on top of that. For the building official, my same sentiment. It's, over the last few years, we see a lot of housing coming through, and they're overloaded as well. And I didn't really agree with having the part-time like supervisory building official, and then that only be part-time. So I understand why the consideration was to bring in someone not contracted, someone permanent working for the city, and then make that a full-time position to help the building official as well that we have. For the training, I couldn't agree with you anymore. I see that quite a bit, and I think that some of our employees feel that they need a lot of support and resources and tools to be able to complete their positions or tasks successfully and not feel that frustration. So I do agree with you that an incredible amount of time should be spent more on on training those employees. For city grants, I'm completely on board with that. I've been saying, so we had our strategic plan session last year about that department being really overloaded with work, and with the amount of millions of dollars that we're going after. I mean, just in the last few months, $50 million, and the incredible amount of detail that takes, and skill at that level for grant writing. And I know our grants manager, is working long evenings into the weekends, and to some point, it's just kind of unfair to not show support in that area. I think for me is that, I share the same concerns as the mayor does, is, if we don't have any additional revenue streams or, increases in revenues, then we run into, does expenditures then, surpass, right, revenues, and that's always of concern. My concern is that we're balanced right now to the dollar, and that's not a comfortable position that I like to be in. But at the same time, I'm very supportive, and I know the need that our execs need to successfully provide quality services to residents. So for me, I support it. Obviously, when they come through, they still need to be approved individually. But I do have concerns of where we're going to be at in a few years. And obviously, when we see increases in expenditures, and we've seen this with public safety, over time, even with the same amount of personnel, it's going to increase, whether it's due to inflation or we have to accommodate the cost of living adjustment, they're going to increase regardless. And so, I fully support bringing additional employees. I know the need is there, but I share the same concern of where we're going to be at in a few years. And if we're cutting it too close, the last thing I want to do is then have to cut down on programs or then let go of employees a few years down the road. And that's the last thing that I would want to see. My comments.
One of my worries is that throughout the county, I happen to work for the county, is you're seeing a lot of people leave. And they're leaving because they're overworked, underpaid, but typically it's because they're overworked. And that's kind of my worry. If we have departments that are already low in staff and overloaded with work, and they get a job offer that perhaps maybe even the same pay, but the workload is lower, they may leave us. And we're already short of staff. Our workers are already working long hours, as others have stated. And as we continue to grow as a city, the size of running it is going to have to grow as well. The question is, how are we going to grow it, and do we have to add them all at once? If that's what the need is to do the work right now, I would have to support the leadership in our city. If we requested additional information and now we have it, perhaps maybe more information is needed. I don't know. I'm satisfied with what I see here. I think that our incoming resources are going to be more because we're building more, and I don't see us losing money in where we're at now. But my fear is whether we don't fill them and then or we fill them and they have to get fired down the road, laid off, a nicer way of putting it, or they leave us because they're overworked. So I don't see a good answer. But my position is, if the work has been done, I trust the management that if this is what is needed to get the work done and to be able to meet the level of work that they have right now, then I have to support that. I have no reason to think that this is not needed. And so I'm in favor of the 6 positions.
We got a few comments here.
Yes,
And
of course.
Nathan, thank you for going more into detail. And actually defending why you need them. I think that's something that should be done on a more regular basis, and it gives us a good understanding. And I want to go over a couple of positions. The Public Works, you mentioned that that position is needed to really manage the LLMDs because the Public Works Director is really managing that program. We had an analyst that was doing the LLMDs and assisting in the LLMDs. Was that position not replaced? Lynn was doing a lot of that work. And so is this in addition to the analyst, or was there a reorg before and that was never transferred over to the Public Works Department?
So the position with Lynn, what Lynn was filling in for on this was on the budget side of the LMDs and the CIP budgeting. That position ended up becoming the finance manager position, which is not helpful that it's not getting filled, but that was to take the budgeting off. Lynn was not necessarily assisting so much with the actual contract management. Really, this is a matter of having a significant additional number of contracts to manage, both for the LMDs. And if you look at the CIP list, there are several projects that Public Works has on there that they're managing they didn't have in the previous years because they're trying to push them out. So it's a little bit more towards those lines.
So if the need is to administer Public Works projects one time, because LLMDs don't have an exponential growth in, the way they generate dollars, is that going to, in a year from now, when those projects have been done and administered, could we not look at that and say, okay, well, if the idea here is to manage and then get these Public Works projects done within the LLMDs, is there a better way to do it? For example, can we go to engineering and then see if engineering can assist to actually administer and get some of those LLMD projects? Did that conversation happen, Mr. City Manager?
We haven't had that discussion in regards to long-term recession analysis. Right now, as Nathan indicated, it's more of a project management need. We have a lot of money that we need to use for the LMDs, and we got to get these projects out. So yeah, where there's always going to be constant revenues in the LMDs, and they're always going to need contracts and projects. Some LMDs are not as healthy as others, but the healthy ones need to have projects pushed out. So that was kind of the rationale behind that.
I'm just wondering, is that where's the make or break, like, or buy or you make?
Let me, so just to kind of give you a scope on that, of the $4.9 million that we're talking about in budgeted funds out of the LMD, I think it's like 1.7 is current CIP. They'll be multi-year projects, but they are currently on the CIP schedule. The remainder are ongoing maintenance. That's literally the way the engineer has them laid into the LMDs. They're ongoing maintenance contracts that need to be managed. So a good portion of this is an ongoing management.
Analyst to manage the
Yeah.
contracts. That was the gentleman by the name of Robert that used to do the LLMD management. He was never replaced.
Yes.
Was that recent?
Yeah, he was replaced.
Okay, so then what is that person that's managing the LLMDs and the contracts doing?
He actually administers the day-to-day with the contractors. He inspects the MDs, the controllers, the equipment out there. He makes sure all the contractors doing their jobs or meeting their schedules. But he also goes out there and fixes, a controller that's broken, valve that's not working. He'll go out there and do that. This one is more just from an administrative perspective. And also, please keep in mind that we have, I think, 2 or 3 more communities coming on board with their own LMDs. And if the housing market continues, we're going to get more LMDs coming soon.
So you'll have 3 full-time equivalents managing LLMDs, your fiscal analyst, this person that's on the field that's managing on the field contracts, and then somebody that's going to be overseeing just the contracts and administration of the contracts.
More project management, administering the projects that are coming in to replace major irrigation lines, add new amenities to those LMDs, redesign the designs that are coming in through redesigning a couple of retention basins. They'll be handling more of the project management.
Again, I ask if those are gonna be one-time equivalent projects, because LLMDs do not generate substantial funds, they're very slow growing. And the LLMDs that we do have, we've accumulated some dollars and we want to get them out. Does it not make sense to go to engineering and then see if engineering can administer these one-time projects? Just, I'm asking, and to make that analysis. On the finance department, you mentioned that the water manager, that right now we're using temporary staff.
For the front counter customer service. Yes.
Yeah, and so this new position is going to be overseeing these customer service reps, or becoming on full time to be that person. So then it's a general wash, would you call it? that?
Correct. It's to be a general wash to cover the exact same position at the same level and be overseen by the customer service supervisor that you council previously approved the job change.
These are positions that are very much needed because these are revenue
Right.
generators for the city.
Keeping the money.
On the development services side, I'm very proud to say that, hey, $33 million in sales tax for cannabis sales tax has been created in the city. Now, that's not meaning that the city's realizing all those $33 million, or 5-6%, I think is what we get. But nonetheless, it is to say that that industry is growing. It's not as fast growing as we perhaps would have wanted to see it, but $33 million is probably the leading, or maybe behind gasoline now. Coachella is probably buying gasoline and buying marijuana. Anyhow, so to me, I think that, moving that to a full-time equivalent, it's, well, it's not a wash. It is a position that as that industry grows, more oversight and compliance is going to be needed, and making sure that people are fully audited. That's something that, that we want to see. On the building official side, absolutely. The building official, what we have right now is we're buying it, in a part-time equivalent, but it also is it's causing problems, right? As it relates to just responsiveness, et cetera. I would say though, is that as that building official becomes full-time, we need to really manage the workload, so that's like, okay, the building official, and then we have an inspector out there, maybe the person could do the same thing. I don't know. But really trying to add to, you don't, because there's talks already of slowdown, so we got to watch that. On the human resources side, absolutely, it makes a lot of sense that that we've grown, and it's only been 2 positions. They should get a third. Sorry, Sandy. But yeah, I mean, it's just, that makes a lot of sense. On the grant manager side, Mr. City Manager, I'm wondering if you could do a restructuring where you have your assistant to the city manager and the grant manager work together in a combination and really manage and oversee these programs. I've had conversations with you, you've had conversations with me about tasks, and then being able to assign tasks to your assistant to the city manager. This looks like an opportunity where maybe there could be some collaboration and really fully understand these programs and really work on that. I mean, have you considered that?
No, that's a good consideration, Mr. Mayor. We can look into that.
Okay. So I mean, if you guys can look at that, and then kind of on the public works side, I really want to understand, like, what's the long-term function of that public works position? You're saying right now you got one-time projects that you want to get done, 1.7 million dollars that we're going to get out. After that's done, what's the daily job function? Because you started the presentation with the task. So as those projects get done, how does that person's task look long term?
Maybe it sounds like you're concerned about 2 positions.
Yeah, 2,
Which
mainly
are
2. It's a public works, and then the grants programs, and then seeing if they're internally, we can kind of restructure the organization, figure that out.
Yeah, we can make those considerations if council wants to, except we still have one more council meeting before the resolution that allows us that protection. If they want to continue the item, we can bring them back with the revised recommendation, and we can go from there.
Yeah.
So would that be completely then removing the assistant from under your supervision and then shifting it over the grants manager?
We'll do the analysis. I'll make a recommendation and see if council is acceptable to that, and then we can go from there.
So you're then willing to forego an assistant that works directly for you?
If the analysis determines that, we can, yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure that, that the grants manager, they need a lot of help over there. So that they have someone that's going to be high level, proactive and very qualified. When we're going after so many millions of dollars, we need to make sure that they have to be very, very detail oriented.
And then just FYI, the assistant to the city manager used to be the grant manager too, so that's within his scope. So just something to really think about. You'll come back, I mean, maybe we continue this and then for the next meeting.
So one quick consideration, and we can do that. The grant position, remember when we did look at the grants in total, we did identify that we had a greater need than just this one particular department assistant. This was just to take some of the basic clerical type of activities off the grants manager's plate. So even if we were to reorganize that in some way, that would not, I mean, you would not want those two individuals to be paid significantly more than the functions that we need to capture with this particular position. So just if we come back with still recommending that position, I'm just saying that that's probably how that would fall out. So just wanted to point out the discrepancies in work
So
class.
you're saying you need someone to do the clerical work? Is it like-
Yeah, so I'm
That's
saying it
what
would.
the 1 and 2 is, right?
Yeah, that's why we put that in as a 1 and 2, because otherwise somebody, a management level staff is doing the 1 and 2.
Clerical work.
But the one thing about our organization, and you're analyzing it, you're seeing it. Managers here in Coachella for the longest time have had to do clerical work. That's just
Well,
part of, now, are we gonna change?
well, but do we want to pay someone at a higher level to do photocopying of documents or, no, that's not, that's,
I understand that, but I mean, that just generally, like, that they're like a manager, there was nothing that they couldn't do. They're like, they're
Right,
specialized. And that's how we've, I mean, it's just the organization, we've stayed small, 70%, and it's because of the cost. I'm not saying that we're not gonna change, but it's just things to really consider.
Yeah, I'm supportive of the bringing that grants manager position. I would like to see the analysis that mayor recommended, but then I think that, I also agree with Mayor Pro Tem Gonzalez that we shouldn't be paying, management level positions to do non-management level work. And then, if there's a need, if we're hearing there's a need to, reconsider the role of the assistant to city manager, then, there was 7 other positions that were not taken consideration. How can, obviously that's a different conversation, not, for this, but, I just, and for the purpose of this, I'm on board with, even now after hearing the mayor too, I wouldn't mind tabling the public works management analyst, after hearing some of his recommendations, but very comfortable moving with the 5, positions that are so good.
I think we bring it back, do the homework.
Yeah.
I mean, we got another week, and then we bring it back, you do your analysis. If it doesn't work, fine, I just do the analysis.
Yeah.
And then just to put it into better perspective, the assistant to the city managers, it's well over 6 figures. And so when we're looking at, well over 6 figures to be doing paperwork, you have to take into consideration.
Another thing really, you're looking at administering and actually delivering a program is what I heard. That the functionality of that role is to become programmatic, like, it's service delivery and giving service to the community and having people that are skilled, that know how to actually receive paperwork, take the paperwork to meet.
So we're gonna bring this item back in
Yeah.
next week's.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll motion to continue this item. So is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
all right.
We'll move to going back to the consent calendar, item number 9, hopefully. And you were there.
Yes, sir, I'm here. Sorry, I was available earlier as well, but my mouse did not want to allow me to unmute my computer. Would you like me to go over the presentation for the Fountainhead Plaza at this time?
We would. It was requested by the city manager that you had a presentation, so we want to
Yes.
hear it.
Okay. Let me open that presentation. Is the slideshow full screen and visible?
Yeah, we can see it. You just want to maybe put it to slide presentation. And but we can see it.
Okay, it is on the full screen slide though?
No, we can see it. It's not on the presentation. You make it a slideshow.
On your screen.
Yeah. There you go.
So one of the staff reports presented tonight was approval of final parcel map 37940, which is the Fountainhead Plaza. We wanted to pull this item so we could briefly discuss this parcel map and discuss some of the progress that's being made on the project. This is phase 2 of the Fountainhead Plaza project. The McDonald's and the Walgreens parcels have previously been developed, and all of the parcels you see here in bold, parcels 1 through 7, are currently 2 remainder parcels that had been intended to be subdivided in the future. So this parcel map is to subdivide that and continue with the development in the Fountainhead Plaza. They're currently working on a phase where they are completing the Starbucks restaurant. They will be starting soon on an Aldi's and a Panda Express, as well as those projects become approved and move forward. These are renderings that have been presented to City Council and Planning Commission in the past, showing the type of project that is going on here. One of the recommendations that you will not see in this is we're not recommending a subdivision improvement agreement with this final track map because the developer already has approved plans, they've already paid deposits, and they've actually already begun work on all of the street improvements. So all of the street improvements, undergrounding electric, those type of things that would be covered under a subdivision improvement agreement have already been resolved, and the work is currently being undertaken. So that's why the parcel map is being approved as is without that subdivision improvement agreement attached to it. On First Street, we are doing a Pueblo Viejo downtown style design with bump out ADA ramps, a 3-way stop at Orchard Street to help control that traffic at the main drive aisle location. And there will be pavers and the decorative style downtown lights on the First Street portion only. So they also are required to underground the utility poles on First Street because these are the only 2 utility poles that exist along the frontage. So that has been conditioned on them, and they have already begun that work as well. So this is a picture from Palm and First Street showing the construction is already ongoing, and these street improvements are tied to the permit phases of the Starbucks and the Aldi's restaurant. The trench you see in the road is for the underground conduit, and those two large kind of unattractive telephone poles at the intersection of Cesar Chavez and First Street will be underground soon. And the entire north side of First Street will have that nice downtown style sidewalk that we're looking for. On 6th Street, on Cesar Chavez Street, we did get them to put in the large bus turnout. There is an existing bus stop there, but it's currently a straight curb. So we did have them recess the sidewalk so that we can have a bus turnout. That way, when the bus in the future stops there to drop people off to use that shopping center, it can pull completely out and no longer has to block the lane and block the bike lane when it stops on the side of the road. They are already working on 6th Street. They've already removed that curb section, and they will be installing the bus turnout within the next couple of weeks. Also, the picture on the right just shows the progress being made at Starbucks. They just recently today finished up the majority of all the curb gutter on site, and they'll be doing some of the finished asphalt and some of the finished grading at that Starbucks location. Another update I wanted to bring to your attention, just because this has been brought to City Council before, is the drive-through location at the McDonald's. One of the conditions that we had on the Starbucks is that they come up with a plan to resolve the drive-through location at McDonald's. Previously, before this contract had started, before this work had started, the queue of the cars at McDonald's would queue in the main drive aisle, often blocking the access to the entire facility and sometimes even backing out into Cesar Chavez. So we have worked with the Fountainhead Plaza and the developer to come up with a plan to make sure that those cars that are queuing at the drive-through at McDonald's will queue within the McDonald's parking area, and they won't block the access to the Starbucks or the Aldi's or the Panda Express or other businesses that are going to be developed there. So that drive aisle that goes into where people take the shortcut into the drive-through will be blocked off with do not enter signs, and it'll be a one-way exit only. And they'll put additional signs to make sure that people drive around the store and resolve that, that traffic queuing problem that has existed in the past. So that's the update for that project. We just wanted to give City Council a brief update on what was going on there and the expectations of what to see in the coming weeks and months. Sir.
Andrew, on the McDonald's, that was going to be my concern again. Can we go back to that slide?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't see. So the only resolution is to add a sign.
They'll add 2 do not enter signs at that location. They'll also paint in very large letters, like the big has the dimensions there, 28-inch letters. So in big letters on the ground, they'll paint do not enter with a large, red stop bar. And then the arrows will actually be painted on the ground. So the arrows that you see here, those are actually painted on the ground, so that when you come in, you'll see 2 do not enter signs, a huge do not enter painted on the ground, and a large arrow, which would discourage people. They're also adding additional signage near the intersection to tell people to keep heading forward to get to the drive-through, and additional signage at this entrance to inform people to go this way to access the drive-through.
Andrew, if I'm going off of Cesar Chavez and I'm making a right and I'm coming from, just say City Hall right there, and I make a right, show me how to get to McDonald's drive-through.
Okay. So you would come in the main drive aisle. This is kind of the main intersection where you would go down to Aldi's or Starbucks. So you would then make the left, and then you would make another left into the McDonald's parking lot area. So kind of like how it's queuing now. So ever since construction started, they've put cones here and they've no longer been allowing people to enter there. So now the queue for the McDonald's kind of circles around through the parking lot.
Yeah. So what happens too, though, is that when you have that, these parking lots that are closest to McDonald's become useless. because there's cars lined up and nobody can access them. Would it not be better that we sort of that they're able to actually, I don't think the sign's doing enough. There's no type of policing around drive-throughs. We see it on 48 and on 48 Starbucks. There's people that even leak into Avenue 48, and there's no, obviously they're not allowed to do that, but it happens, right? And we are not going to use, our resources to be able to have police checking, making sure people are using the drive-through at the way that their signs are mentioned. So these are simply, people are going to see this as suggestions, and when people are hungry and hangry, they don't really care. There's a do not enter sign. There's no one that's going to stop, tell them, no, and they're just put up the finger to whoever they cut. I think we need to be a little more proactive on this approach. So, if that parking lot, next to the McDonald's becomes useless, why not use that at remove that parking lot and then have similar to what the Starbucks, the McDonald's on, I think the best drive-through McDonald's in the Valley has to be like the one on 111 and like Clinton. They have a long sort of entrance, and they don't have this. So instead of having like a wall around it, and making that loop for the drive-through all around the McDonald's, and making having sure that the entrance on McDonald's is the one facing Cesar Chavez, and then keeping that as a drive-through, and you avoid a lot of that problem. It just sort of, and that way people, even if they come in through that do not enter sign, they won't be able to enter because there's going to be sort of a barrier between it. We need to look at more proactive ways to avoid this. I don't see these signs doing much of a change, quite frankly.
So I want to thank you for your comments, and I actually agree with everything you just said. And I do believe that McDonald's needs to move forward with a revised actual site plan. But there's not a nexus to tie that improvement at this time to the Starbucks and the Aldi's. So telling the Starbucks that we would hold their permits, or we would hold this final map, because McDonald's was approved a long time ago. It's existed in that condition for a long time. And one of the goal of this is to make sure that we don't affect city traffic. So if they have problems on site within their own footprint, that's going to negatively affect their business, and they absolutely need to make measures to improve that on their own property. But as long as we're not having negative measures that are affecting Cesar Chavez or affecting intersections where it affects public streets, that's really something we want to make sure that we avoid. But I agree that so this plan would be in conjunction with the Starbucks and the Aldi's. If we can get 90% of the people to get used to this traffic pattern, we can at least make sure that we're not having a negative impact on the access points to the Aldi's or spilling all the way out and having problems with the access on Cesar Chavez.
I'm going to make just a suggestion, and maybe Andrew, you and myself, we can maybe call the owner of McDonald's. That the owner of McDonald's, he owns like 10 of them in the Coachella Valley, and so let's reach out to him and just kind of show him, hey, look, this is you're gonna have some problems here in the future. So let's do that. But you're doing what you need to in order to meet the requirements of the development right now.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's not going to work, but if we do have 90% law-abiding citizens, I think it's more like 60 when it comes to traffic concerns.
Yeah.
But maybe we'll get some.
But I think it's just, because, and this could be confusing because for a long time, the one proper entrance for McDonald's was where now we're putting do not enter. Before they had cones by where the parking lots were, and it says, do not enter through here. And now it's sort of like all of a sudden, that this is the other proper way. And forever, like the one, the way that, folks were accessing or should have accessed this McDonald's drive-through was through where now we're putting do not enter. And even before these plans in the construction, they had, and I brought up these weird cones they had there, and they just said like, don't enter through here. and nobody would even follow
Yeah,
it.
why couldn't they put Andrew, why couldn't they put a little island or curb right there on the do not enter, right there?
Currently, because of the layout of the parking lot, it does have to remain open for fire access. So we cannot put a physical barrier there at this time because of the layout. Because if a fire truck was to pull in, they still need to be able to get out in that area. So that was a concern when it comes to circulation. So that, when it's not rush hour during dinner time and it's not backed up, you still want to be able to have that circulation where people can exit.
On the Cesar Chavez entrance as well, is there another do not enter sign there too?
There's no other entrances on Cesar Chavez other than the main driveway here.
Okay, so I just see like that pattern, that the little box there, it says, that's not an entrance right there. That's not an entrance.
This? Oh, this
Well,
is
no, there,
this
like
is-
if you go back to where you started, that kind of, that little pattern, that little grid right there, that's not an entrance.
no, that's landscape. There's no
Not that,
drive
just next to it, it's just the stripes.
here.
No, go back,
Here.
right there, yeah,
No, that's the handicap parking stalls.
okay.
So I
Alright.
think the best approach is the mayor and yourself will meet with the McDonald's owner and see what improvements they can make. It's a parking lot.
All right, well, with that, I'll motion to approve and thank you for your presentation. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries. With that, we'll move on to item number 16. I did send an email to our city manager as well as city attorney. I will be abstaining from item number 16 as I own real property 1,000 feet from the proposed develop or proposed public investment. With that, I'll pass the chair over to our mayor pro tem.
So item 16, construction contract with Dog and Son Construction Inc. in the amount of $6,253,000. That amount, 10% for contingency for the construction of the fire department number 79 rehabilitation and expansion project F7. We have a presentation.
Andrew Simmons will be providing that presentation.
Okay. Thank you. Let me get my presentation open so that I may share it. Okay. Is the screen sharing correctly?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So as Mayor Pro Tem indicated, this is a presentation for the potential award of contract for the fire station rehabilitation expansion project. This has been presented many times, so I mean, just to quickly go over the project again. The primary focus of this project is to demolish the existing living quarters and more than double that space and expand that space in order to modernize all of the office space and living quarters within the fire station. The Apparatus Bay is primarily left intact structurally with this project. For a background on the project, on December 8th, the City Council did authorize staff to advertise for construction bids. And at that time, about $6.8 million was appropriated, which included $5 million of ARPA funds and 1.8 from fire diff. Do apologize, I put the wrong number there on the ARPA funds. 5 million was appropriated on December 8th. On April 19th, the city issued a notice inviting bids. On May 4th, we hosted our mandatory job walk. We did have 4 contractors show up for the mandatory job walk. And on June 7th, the city held the public bid opening. At the bid opening, we did receive 4 responsive bids. So all 4 of the contractors who came to the mandatory job walk bid on the project. And the low apparent bidder was Dalkey & Sons Construction, Inc. at a total cost of $6,253,955. And that cost does include all 4 of the ad alternatives, which we are recommending approving. We did receive a bid protest the day after the bid was opened by Pro West Construction. They submitted the protest per the specifications and on time, and the city did perform an independent factual inquiry on that bid protest. And after presenting the results of that factual inquiry back to Pro West Construction, they did officially give us written notification to cancel their bid protest. So we are now moving forward with Dalkey & Sons as the lowest responsive bidder. As far as the entire construction project, the base bid items were $5,389,205, and again, the construction ad alternates are $864,750. So that makes our total construction subtotal for the base and ad alternates the $6,253,000. The total budget will include a 10% contingency. We've also added in the cost for the temporary housing, which has already been presented to council at a separate meeting. And we are asking for an additional $50,000 for materials testing throughout the course of the project, and an additional $200,000 for construction engineering with Canon Design. They are the ones who did all of the design work for us ahead of time, and they'll be doing construction engineering during the whole phase of the project as well. So the total construction cost, including the construction engineering, the temporary housing contingency, comes to a total of $7,291,410. As I said on the previous slide, the previous appropriation was 6.8 million. So the current offset is 491,400. So given a lot of concerns with inflation and just high increases in prices, very quickly over a short amount of time, that small additional of 491,400 was relatively expected because of the high inflation costs. So I did want to go over all of the ad alts in detail. We are recommending approving the base project and all 4 ad alternates. So I did want to go over each one of those and the price that those are. Ad alternate number 1 is for the exterior loggia or the pergola. So that's the large shade structure out in front here. And that came in at $224,750. It's going to match the pergola, the loggia design at the library. So from an architectural standpoint, from the comments from Planning Commission and during the design phase, this has always been an important part of the project in order to bring the fire station closer to the street and really give it that architectural look that matches the library, matches some of the architectural aspects that we're trying to do in the downtown area. Ad alt number 2 is to replace all of the plaster on the existing building. One thing on all of the graphics that have been presented to City Council so far, it kind of shows this nice new Adobe look, and it shows the existing building having that same matching Adobe look. The existing building has this very rough kind of early 1970s style plaster that is in need of some repair anyway. So as long as we are doing this big new addition with this beautiful new finishes and everything, we do think it's in the best interest to go ahead and just replaster the whole rest of the building so that the whole building matches and all has a matching texture and matching colors. So the additional cost for the ad alternate to replaster the entire structure is the $270,000. Adult number 3 is to do work inside the Apparatus Bay. I had said at the beginning, the base construction project did not include work within the Apparatus Bay. However, all of the ceiling panels in the Apparatus Bay over the vehicles are this popcorn texture drywall, which does have asbestos in it. And there has been issues in the past with leaking in some of those panels. This large white panel here, you can see an entire panel actually just fell down. Luckily, no one was standing under it when it happened. So this ad alternate we feel is like very important because it will remove all of the asbestos from the Apparatus Bay area, so that there's no longer any hazardous materials, hazardous asbestos, anything like that within the facility. And ad alt number 4 is to replace the existing roof. One of the reasons the panels have those stains and have fallen down in the past is because the existing roof, it's the original roof from when the structure was built in 1970. So it is in need of replacement. It does leak regularly during rainstorms. So there is work that needs to be done on the roof in order to fix those leaks. So right now, while the firefighters are moved out and while we have the project under construction anyway, it's obviously the logical time to go ahead and replace the entire roof with this project as well. So replacing the entire roof would be the $230,000. And that way, when we have the new ceiling panels in the Apparatus Bay, we don't have to worry about those becoming damaged by any water or leakage from, leaving that old roof in place. So that is all of the 4 ad alts that are being recommended to move forward with the base construction project. As far as the fiscal impact, as I said, we are the $491,400 additional funding, additional appropriation would be required to meet the current construction budget. And those funds would be recommended to come from the ARPA funding. Looking at how that affects our total ARPA budgets, there are 2 items that actually are no longer needed to move forward with our ARPA funding because we have found other resources to fund those projects. So the utility assistance to pay residents for delinquent utility bills, there is other state funding that has been made available to carry that program forward. So we no longer need that funding within ARPA to accommodate that. And the facility upgrades for the air filters, I believe we're looking at other funding for that project as well. So there is that additional cushion already built in order to have this additional funding from ARPA so that we can fund the complete project plus all ad alternates and go ahead and get this done right on the first time, without having to come back and do additional repairs later. So with that, the staff recommendation that we are making is to authorize the city manager to execute the construction contract with Dalkey & Sons Construction in the total amount of the $6,253,955 with the additional 10% contingency. And then also authorize the contract with Atlas Engineering for on-call consultant materials testing, and authorize a amended contract with Canon Design so that they can perform the construction phase engineering services during the project as well. Obviously, the city council can look at different options with ad alternates, and I welcome any questions or opinions that anyone has on the project moving forward.
Question or comment, Council?
And we do have a speaker from on this item, Mayor Pro
Okay.
Tem, Brian White.
Evening, Honorable Mayor Pro Tem, Council, City Manager, staff, and citizens watching at home. My name is Brian White. I'm the fire chief for the city of Coachella, and I just had a couple of brief comments that I wanted to add Andrew really kind of hit the nail on the head with the additional add-ons in the fire station, but I did want to add a couple of comments with my experience in the 22 years in the fire service. I've lived through a couple of fire station expansions and remodels. Before I get into those comments, though, I just wanted to take a brief second to just thank the council and city manager and all the staff for assisting with Chief De La Cruz's retirement send-off last week. What a way to end 40 years in the fire service and just leadership and dedication to the Coachella Valley. It was a great send-off, and we appreciate all the support, helping him transition to the next phase in his career. So thank you very much for that. The item before you tonight seeks to bridge a gap in the previously approved appropriation to rehabilitate and expand Fire Station 79. You may recall that in December, I had mentioned that construction costs were rising at a rate of $150,000 a month. Just a few short months later, construction costs exploded due to commodity restrictions and labor shortages. Coupled with inflation, we're seeing construction costs increase by as much as $300,000 per month. These numbers are consistent with the 4 other fire station projects that are underway throughout the Coachella Valley. We all agree that there's a definite need for the rehabilitation of Fire Station 79. When the meeting ended in December, we were all hopeful that we were going to be returning funds tonight, not asking for additional funds to bridge the gap. I've read the staff report and had many discussions with city staff, and I just wanted to add a couple of comments based on my experience, having lived through several expansions and fire station reconstructions, on some of the pitfalls that may exist if we don't take all 4 of the additional add-ons. Replacing the tile roof and portions of the building on Fire Station 79. 79 is over 40 years old. It's seen a few days of sun. It's seen a few days of weather. There are currently several spots that you saw in the photos. No matter how hard city staff tries to repair them, the leaks and the damage underneath the tile and the substructure is just too great. You saw the sections of the roof that were falling out. Andrew briefly mentioned rain, and as you know, there's not a whole lot of rain here in the Coachella Valley, but when it does rain, it's usually pretty significant, especially with our thunderstorms and our monsoonal flows. The asbestos removal in the bay, we all know that asbestos is a carcinogen, and it was used heavily in the construction area and the materials when Fire Station 79 was built. Investing now to properly mitigate the asbestos improves not only our firefighters' living conditions, but it makes future repairs easier, and it saves money. So as we all know, everything is getting more expensive. A gallon of gas, 4x8 sheet of plywood, and especially hazardous abatement. A huge portion of the cost of these projects is the temporary housing. The fire department worked with city staff to come up with alternative housing methods. Regulation is currently underway within the state of California, which is going to make future projects more and more difficult with the zoning and the requirements of the temporary housing. We got a huge win with this one, but I'm not sure how many more successful temporary housing projects we're going to be able to get under our belt before that regulation comes into effect. And then it just increases the cost of the temporary housing because it has to be R2 compliant. So since the fire station and the crew are already moved into the temporary housing, the city has already spent a significant amount of money and capital up front. And it just makes sense to try to do some of these projects while the crew is already in the temporary housing and not have to come back. In my experience, working on fire stations and old buildings, they're like an onion. And the more that you peel it back, the more and the worse that it gets. So again, having everything tied together under the one project, it improves the service and delivery, the heavy equipment, the contractors, the permitting, all of that stuff is already done under the one umbrella. And it just streamlines the process. We oftentimes run into problems when we come back and do add-ons because we're trying to tie new construction into old construction. And again, just in my 22 years in the fire service and all of the remodels and the building that I've experienced in fire stations, if it is feasible, it is best to just capture it all under one shot. So regardless of the outcome tonight, I wanted to take a quick moment to thank the council and the staff for all of their support and hard work in getting the project here. This project has literally been years in the making, and it's taken countless staff hours. And your firefighters behind me tonight are grateful for the support that you have shown all of us and for getting the project to this point. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think for me is that we're too far in, to not move forward. Of course, I'm concerned with the increase of cost, but at this point, we've already approved the renovation. This is just to execute the contract. I do think that we need to reevaluate the ARPA recommendations at this point and then see where else we can make cuts or what we can, get through grants or other methods of resources. But I think that for me, I support it. But for us on the city side, I just think that we need to reevaluate and see where we can make some, where we can kind of bring down some more cost and we can use that back to the community. So for me, I support the execution of the contracts and move forward with the renovation.
Yeah, it's a great project. Excited to see it, come to life, and just help this downtown come more to life, right? Think about downtown 10 years ago, it's not what it is today. And fire station, providing such amazing services to our residents in our city and east of our city or wherever you all need it, and to be able to, have comfortable environment, where you come out of, it's important for us to be able to provide that. And so I think it's necessary, and I'm with it. Obviously want to make sure that our staff, is I know I still select the lowest bidder. Want to make sure that, we, and moving forward, that we oversee the project well, and that we don't have received, too many changes of orders where the lowest bidder eventually becomes, not the lowest cost. So make sure that, our staff, we want to make sure that we're on it and we're looking at it, have a strong oversight, and to make sure that we deliver this, and we deliver it with the amount that's in an efficient manner, but obviously provide a great service to our fire team and to our community at large. So those are my comments, and I'm on board.
My comment is that we have made the commitment to revitalize that building that is clearly in bad need of repair. It makes absolutely no sense to renovate the inside and allow a leaky roof to exist. It just makes no sense. So clearly, as you peel the onion and stinkier as it gets, right? We want to make sure that it's done right the first time so that it doesn't cost us more money down the road fixing what we already, the new stuff, as well as the stinkiness from the onion, right? To stay on that same thought process. So my position is that it's highly probable, may get stinkier as it gets peeled. But more importantly, to have a project that is timely and within budget would be lovely. So again, if the staff can truly spend some energy making sure that that it's done well, and of course some of the extra stuff, those are all wonderful things. That whole fan stucco on the outside, clearly 1970s, and perhaps we should upgrade it, but you have my support entirely. So
Motion to approve.
I was just going to ask, what are the wishes of the council?
Motion to approve.
Well, second.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, do you want to take or do we just?
Yeah. I could take a roll. Councilmember Galarza,
Aye.
Councilmember Delgado.
Yes.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Gonzalez.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Congratulations.
Thank you all for coming, and thank you for the service to our community. Really appreciate it.
Well, congratulations, long time coming.
I gotta work in the field.
Yeah, you all deserve it, and I know we were having a conversation last week about having some modern amenities like your own room. I'm not gonna say who snores, but I heard that a few of you might. It's all good. Well, congratulations. With that, we'll move on to the public hearing calendar. Item number 17, adopt resolution 22-64, authorizing the establishment of the annual special tax for City of Coachella Community Facilities District number 205-01 and the annexation area thereto of fiscal year 22-23. I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. This item, is there anyone that would like to speak to the council adopting resolution 22-64? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and ask the city council what are their wishes. Is there a motion to approve this item?
So moved.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Can we get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Delgado,
Yes.
Councilmember Galarza,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Gonzalez.
Has she stepped out?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, yes, she stepped away. Mayor Hernandez.
Aye. Move on now to item number 18. This is Community Facilities District CFD number 2005-01, annexation 34, Via Verde Apartments. This is to adopt resolution 2022-69, adopt resolution number 22-70, adopt resolution number 22-71, which includes the canvassing results of said election, and introduce number 1197 on behalf of CFD number 2005-1, authorizing the levy of the special tax. I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing.
Correct,
It's
Mr. Mayor.
7:45.
We didn't receive the official ballot in time as such. We're going to recommend continue this item to July 27th.
I'll ask for a motion to
2022.
continue to July
So moved.
27th, you said?
July 27th.
27th or a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify, and we'll leave the public hearing open. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We'll move on now to item number 19. This is public hearing on resolution 22-73, confirming the assessment and diagram and ordering the levy of and collection of assessments for the City of Coachella Lighting and Landscape Maintenance District number 1 through 40 for fiscal year 22-23. I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing at 7:46. Is there anyone that would like to speak on item number 19? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Is there, for the wishes of the city council, again, this is for resolution 22-73, confirm the assessment and diagram and ordering the levy and collection of assessment for the City of Coachella Lighting and Landscape Districts. I'll move to approve. Is there a second?
Well, second.
There's a second. Can we get a roll call, please?
Yes, Councilmember Delgado,
Yes.
Councilmember Galarza,
Aye.
Mayor Hernandez.
Aye. We'll move on now to public comments. The public may address the council, board, corporation, authority on any item of interest to the public that is not on the agenda but is within subject jurisdiction thereof. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Is there anyone that would like to speak to the city council? Angela, do we have any requests?
We
to
don't
speak?
have any, and I do not see any hands raised.
There are none here as well. And we'll move on now to reports and requests, council comments. I'll start to my right.
Just since last we met, we had the 4th of July event. And I just want to thank staff and community for coming out, and obviously fire and everyone that was present to, make sure everything was safe. We remember last year, it was a great event, and I felt that this year we went it was even better. And so, thanks staff for putting that for our community. It was fun. It was a little windy, so I'm glad I didn't get too windy where we had to push it. But overall, great work. Look forward to continuing events, and obviously our September event and a few others that we have coming up. Also, I had a chance to attend the retirement for our Chief De La Cruz, and I just thought that was an amazing event. Thank you all for being present and all the gifts that you all gave to retired chief. And it was an amazing event to see, and the camaraderie and the brotherhood and sisterhood that we saw present. I thought was it was nice, after a long day at work, and being able to be there and enjoy tacos and horchatas with all of you. I think it was so thank you for inviting us and allowing us to share that space. Obviously I haven't participated in the sacrifice you all have, but being there and learning about what you all had to say about chief and the work that you all did together, it's remarkable. And now to follow up with with this today, it was great. So aside of that, those are my only comments. And I look forward to approving the budget next meeting. Thank you, staff, for putting it together.
I agree with Councilmember Galarza. I had a lot of fun. And what I hear is that Chief De La Cruz doesn't speak very much, and he spoke a lot that day. But we all had a good time, and it was really nice seeing him up there having a good time. For me, that made the day for me. And then I want to also thank all of you. I know we didn't get to speak till after many of you had left, but I wasn't in awe of the room, of all the public safety and public servants that were in the room. So thank you all for your service. I do want to talk to staff about a few things that we need to bring back. Is that one, I think we need to really move on the energy study session. I know that you guys have been on their energy commission now for, what is it, about a year? You guys have been on there?
7 months.
7 months. But I would really like to hear some options other than what we heard from the city managers of the city of Indio and the city of La Quinta. I would also like to see, some of the ARPA phase 2 come back. We spent a lot of time in going over all the recommendations, and we're not seeing any of that come back. Last year, we spoke of the strategic plan, and then we met with the executive team members and obviously a full council. And, we talked about many things, including the small business community, bringing back an environmental study session. We also talked about the abatement program that helps with desert landscaping to reduce water use, as well as beautifying some of the frontage for some of the homes. So, I'm still waiting on some of that stuff to come back. And then, for the small business community, the Economic Development Subcommittee, so we can look at the processes and see what we can streamline and make it easier for some of our small business owners. And then as well as that, is see, what ARPA funds we can use to help them, get the proper permits that they need. And that's all my comments. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to be brief, but I'm going to leave with we'll say a good one. Today, very, very, very proud to just announce that RCTC voted for the tier 1 environmental for the train coming into the Coachella Valley. And for the longest time, there was always this mention of the train going to Indio and Indio. And I've been on that committee for about 14 years now. And we got really great news today because RCTC voted as the #1 recommendation that the easternmost terminus would actually be in the city of Coachella. So that means that they are looking at possibly 4 train stops in the Coachella Valley, but one of them will be here in the city of Coachella, more than likely in our downtown. So the way we position the city is that we basically said that nothing for us without us. And so if people want to use our numbers when it comes to disadvantaged communities, then you should actually include us. I mean, what? That's not, I don't know if that's a novel idea, but it's like, hey, there's a disadvantaged area and you're going to say that's going to benefit us. Well, then put it in the city that it actually benefits. So the next step is to move on to phase 2, which is another substantial effort. It's about $60 million. And then phase 3, which is actually the construction. But the good thing is that the city is well positioned now to actually be part of the train conversation. And more than likely that train stop will be here in our downtown. And I think there's a lot of good things that will come from that. The ability to build more housing, and definitely you guys, we're gonna need a lot of ladder truck because I think that'll give us kind of a transit orientated, be able to go 3, 4 stories, 5 stories in downtown. But I just wanted to announce that. I wanted to thank our staff for working with all of us, because this is big for Coachella. It's big news, and we got some work to do to really kind of help identify where a train stop can occur. But all in all, the prospect of seeing that and being part of that conversation, I think for all of us here, where, you know, we get to say that the end of the train is in Coachella. And so that's a good thing, and hopefully everybody can support those efforts as the planning and the continuous work to get it done starts to happen for us. So with that, Gabriel, those are my comments, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council. Just a couple of brief comments. Tomorrow is our annual blood drive at the library. We've been advertising on social media, and hopefully we'll get a good turnout. All the cities are competing against each other to see who can get the most pints of blood. So if you guys know any vampires or anything like that, please bring them over to the library. Number two is just to give you guys FYI, the bowl in the front is going to be replaced and demolished in the upcoming week. So you'll see that construction going on, and it'll probably be obvious during our next council meeting. So FYI, that the front fountain will be replaced. Yeah.
Nice.
And then finally, we have our PIO here, Roseth. She'll be reaching out to everybody for save the dates for upcoming groundbreakings and ribbon cutting events. So I know everybody's schedule is busy, so we want to get those locked in now so we can plan accordingly. So thank you, everybody, for your support, and we'll continue the hard work.
And the fountain calls for a mariachi party outside when it's done.
A
The ribbon
mariachi.
cutting ceremony that's a nice mariachi plaza. So I think Rosetta, I think celebration out there to celebrate the new fountain, because it was a big effort. I know that when it was proposed, it came back and Mayor really pushed to get it something that's similar to what we have already, and so let's celebrate every wins, and
So
mariachi will bring it back.
So I'll share something, and I don't know if everybody's realized this, but there was intentional design here. And obviously in front of the senior center, there's a beautiful fountain. There's a fountain right here in front of us. And then there's a fountain that's actually directly behind us at the Veterans Park. And the idea is that if a new city hall ever got built, that you see this little corridor kind of lines up, and this hallway would be kind of lining up and connecting this whole walkway. Yeah, Jonathan Hoy.
That's a lot of weight to put on us. So why would you guys take out the space? It's like,
Oh, well, you gotta dream. You gotta dream. You gotta put a vision out there.
And
And it is.
Mr. Hoy did.
right in the middle of it, it's gonna be on the side.
That's how they did Washington DC.
No, that's it.
All right, guys,
Thank you guys all.
ladies and gentlemen, we're adjourned.
Thank you.